I'm very pleased to be joined, as I said, by our newest partner, MedC. Beside us on screen, you see Avi, who's the chairman and CEO, as well as Owen, the president and director of MedC Biopharma. And I'm also very happy to be joined by our partners from DealMaker, Michael Werry, who's VP of Sales. And we're here to talk about and introduce you to the team at MedC, their journey, their plans for the future, and really where they're headed as a business and why they're different from everything else you might have seen over the course of your journey through the private markets these days. Team, and indeed everyone on the line with us today, thank you for joining us. Avi and Owen, the whole country seems to be talking about biology and pharmaceuticals these days for a number of very good reasons. I'd maybe like to turn the microphone first and foremost over to you for a short introduction on yourself, background, history, Avi and Owen, and then we'll turn it back to you, Owen, for a primer on MedC and a bit of a 30,000-foot overview. Avi, over to you.
Hi, everyone. My name's Avi Drori. I'm an American and an Israeli. I reside in Israel. We founded MedC back in 2017, part of an effort with the Israeli Organization for Cannabis Research at ARO, basically building a joint venture with Israeli scientists that have been investigating the medicinal properties of cannabis and its potential as a medicinal therapeutic, as a drug, and not just as a plant that has enhanced therapeutic properties. Through that research, we entered into a partnership with the State of Israel and licensing their IP, their knowledge, in investigating the potential for cannabis derived products to cure skin oncology and different skin oncology indications. Through our research over the past few years, we made a significant discovery in a unique combination of active ingredients that brought us to a therapeutic that showed high efficacy in lab for a skin cancer condition called CTCL, which we'll elaborate on later. And through the process over the past few years, we've been developing that drug and bringing it up to the point where we're entering clinical trials pretty soon in the UK. We made public announcement just recently. And we stand at the forefront of bridging that gap between cannabis and between science and science-based products as a true pharmaceutical that you can rely on in order to cure a disease. And that's what MedC is. We're a science-driven company that are developing treatments to cure serious medical conditions. Owen.
Thank you, Avi. My name is Owen Van Cauwenberghe. I'm the president of MedC Biopharma. My background is in pharmaceutical development. I spent 10 years with Eli Lilly Canada, Eli Lilly Global. I did product development there on novel products, synthetic oral peptides. Ran the Canadian labs for part of my 10 years with Lilly. I worked in a pharmaceutical contract research manufacturing organization, helped bring them to become a reputable organization amongst the name brand pharma companies in unique dose forms. And I'm with MedC now for a number of the reasons that Avi has suggested. Primarily, I think there's an element where we have to mature and legitimize the space for cannabis, not only in Canada, but globally. I think it had a strong start that took a little bit of a turn with respect to financial strategy and lost sight of the fact that there's a lot of medical benefit and positive outcome that can come from this plant, which then sets the stage, I think, for other products to be developed by groups like ours for other natural plants outside of the cannabis space. Given my background is pharmaceutical science and product development and commercialization, clinical and regulatory aspects of that as well, I think we've positioned ourselves to be definitely a champion or a leader in this space to develop biotherapeutics. And I'm very excited to be able to tell you about our company today.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for giving us a good overview on your foundings, your backgrounds. I think there's a lot there that we'll unpack in the next 40 minutes or so. I think maybe Mike, good, turn it over to you and we can get started on a Q&A. I think you already dripped an interesting commentary on a press release, but Mike, turn the microphone over to you.
Sure. I think that there was an exciting announcement on Monday regarding the partnership between MedC and Sana Healthcare. I guess just to kick it off, why don't you tell us a little bit about that and what it means for the future of MedC?
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to tell you about the Sana presentation or the Sana press release. And then after, I think we can go back into, I have a couple of slides and it'll just show you how it's allowed us to progress in our strategy. But as Avi mentioned, over the past 3 years, we spent a very concerted effort investing in creating the groundwork or the foundation to position cannabis-derived products in the true medical or biotech space. The development that we've done has shown very promising results, both in kind of the chemistry assays as well as in cell assays for individuals that are being affected by the cutaneous skin cancer disease that we're looking at. And we're at the point where we want to kind of put rubber to the road and prove that in a clinical setting, both from a safety and an efficacy setting. And I think that's right there is foundational to the differentiation of, though we have cannabis origins from our product development, we're a pharmaceutical biotech company, and therefore the burden of proof is on us to show that the products we generate are safe, that they have efficacy, and that a physician and a patient can titrate a dose to get a specified and predictable outcome. In order for us to do that, our strategy is to look for the appropriate geography, regulatory regime, patient population to execute on developing our products. And as we look at cutaneous T-cell lymphoma, it is an orphan indication, which means it's a very small patient population, but it's an unmet need. And being an unmet need means that there are a small number of patients who suffer from it, but they have no true treatment strategy. And in the US, it could be classified as an orphan indication. That is also the same in the UK. So as we were looking for how we were going to move this product forward, we are introduced and generated a relationship with Sana Healthcare. And Sana Healthcare in the UK not only evaluated the data that we had, but our publication on the data that we put together in our study of this disease, and found it very compelling, and felt that it had a very strong position to become an orphan indication or an unmet need indication in the UK. And their expertise, their senior advisors and their relationships in the country, they felt that they could help accelerate us through the clinical execution to assess the value of the data and the product that we've generated, show clinical efficacy, establish us to look for government reimbursement for the product that we're going to generate for this indication, and also establish the opportunity to get orphan indication, what gives us a 10-year exclusivity
This
for
is a big deal.
the product.
This is a big deal, Owen. Like this is something
very
not,
big deal.
not trivial. So before we unpack the entire press release, because you've really given us a tremendous view. Now let's work into a bit the corporate presentation itself, because I think you've set the stage for the significance of this milestone for you. Let's talk about it in the broader context of MedC, and I think we've got some slides to share with the group that you can walk us through as well, and weave that journey in, if that's okay.
Great, perfect. Michael, if you share the slides for me, that's great.
Should be up on the screen.
Perfect. So as we discussed, we are a science-driven company, and that's what we've invested the capital that we've raised since 2017 in generating the science and the foundation for the products that we're interested in. We look at cannabinoids and we look at other natural compounds for the products that we generate, and different, I think, from a number of organizations. We didn't pick a cannabinoid and attach it to a disease. What we did was we identified disease or indications. We looked at what the influence or the impacts were for that indication, so the chemistry associated with how the disease behaves in humans and how it can be treated. And then we assessed cannabis related products or cannabis related extracts to see if they had an impact on the disease. In CTCL they did, therefore we're able to generate a cannabinoid-based therapeutic for CTCL. Foundationally, this is maybe a bit backwards from saying we had CBD and we tried it on diseases. We find the disease first. So it drives us to be an outcome first or an outcome oriented company. The other piece about it in this slide is that we're looking at medical, consumer, and veterinary opportunities in the skin and general health markets. At first glance, this could look like we are potentially lacking focus, but the reality of it is when you start to generate data around particular indication or for particular product combination, that data has the potential to enlighten you to more than one outcome. So if we go into a clinical program for CTCL, we'll get indication for how it treats that disease, but we'll get an indication of how it behaves for inflammation, for skin irritation, for a number of other aspects of overall health and wellness. That data we will move back into the consumer health, and as we get these indications together, we also know that there's a strong lean towards veterinary science for repurposing human products, so we can look at those products and the studies we do in the veterinary space. So for this opportunity today, and the reason we're speaking to you is we're looking to raise money to help enable the execution of these studies that we're initiating. We're doing this in a manner that is a pre-listing approach, which means that this is a private raise. Our intention is to then move to a public listing. This is not a pre-IPO or an IPO. Our intention is to define outcomes, to generate milestones, to meet those milestones, create value, and then to raise additional monies against those value inflection points. So if you go to the next slide, Mike. I've depicted the differentiators for MedC in kind of a pillar type strategy, because foundationally, I think though the market has had a lot of ebbs and flows, and anybody who's participated in a cannabis related market over the past several years has probably seen that it changes very quickly and the wind blows from all directions and sometimes straight down on you if you're not paying attention. But we've been really focused on our foundational or on our grounding for MedC, and the three pillars that we've really driven forward with are our scientific foundation, as I discussed. It is the cornerstone for success of any company, I believe, in this space where cannabinoid products are going to be generated. If you don't understand your product and you can't predict and show reproducibility of that prediction to the end user, you will just be competing on a marketing perspective, not on a quality or product performance perspective. And the data that we support not only substantiates the health claims we want to make about our products, but as I said, it allows us to leverage that data to look at other opportunities to impart it on other products or in other disciplines. The second pillar is our strong leadership. We have a science foundation, but we're not a science project. And I think there's a fundamental fear when science is the first word that you hear come out of the mouth of people starting a company, because money can go into science and it can stay there. It can stay there for a long time. However, our approach is to be able to monetize the value of the science that we generate. And the group of individuals that we have, though a significant portion have a very strong scientific base, we also have an equally significant portion of those with proven success in the pharmaceutical space and in the consumer space for bringing products in the healthcare industry to market. One of our partners that's in the broader slide presentation had many years in GSK and in Eli Lilly, myself as well, a decade or so in Eli Lilly, as well as in CROs. But we've been involved in driving R&D to outcome and value creation for consumers and for pharmaceutical outcome. And we're bringing that to MedC as well, so that our science investment can actually be realized. And the third pillar is that pipeline monetization. We target opportunities of increasing value. You can make a product that's a consumer product, a lower margin, and a higher volume participation in the industry is typical. We can add data to that and make substantiated claims about that product's performance, which increases our margin, reduces our need perhaps for some of the volume that you would require to meet your metrics or your targets, but it allows you to differentiate from others competing in the space. And then the third piece is, but if you really take that data and understanding of your desired outcome to the final level of clinical performance, we can monetize our pipeline as a biotech pharmaceutical company. And that's part of what the announcement that we talked about earlier was about. We do this in a way that has a global reach. We're a global company with our partnerships. The Sana Healthcare group out of the UK and positioning our first therapeutic product in the UK, I think helps demonstrate that. And the data that we generate that allows us to do parallel development for what's enabled or what's allowed in a jurisdiction like Canada versus what's allowed in the UK versus what's allowed in Australia or in the US for that matter. And if we build to jurisdiction and we only release a product once the barriers or the hurdles have been reduced or that we've been able to overcome, we'll be able to maintain our global view. Third slide, Michael.
Okay.
This slide is really to bring together what I've been trying to say. This year for us is an effort to take the last 3 years of investment and scientific development and prove our approach through our first human dose, safety and efficacy studies, and also our opportunity to launch our first consumer products. Following this year's efforts, we'll be able to set the expectation. We'll have substantiated claim, we'll have readout from clinic, and we'll be able to say that our approach to identify a target therapeutic area and develop a product for it and have that product work will be the culmination of our efforts with Sana Healthcare and our clinical execution. We'll be able to launch products off of the base of that information, and we will start to move into places where you get medicinal approval for regulated products. By 2023, our intention is to have an established position, not only as MedC Biopharma, but as a true pharmaceutical biotech with full approval of a product in the prescribed space for cutaneous T-cell lymphoma, and leishmaniasis is another program that we're working on. In an international market where we have orphan designation and we have reimbursement and exclusivity. I think, though this is a 3-year plan, it can sound like it's a bit heroic, but it can also sound like it takes a bit of time. But if you look at any biotech or pharma position, the timelines are similar, but very often in a biotech company, you have one product and one chance to succeed. The way we've established our strategy, I think not only do we have a product that will allow us to potentially hit a home run or a grand slam in the biotech space, we're designed to leverage the data to monetize the information and our understanding along that entire value continuum from consumer product all the way through to therapeutic outcome. Okay, Michael, I think that's
perfect.
Good for.
Okay.
And I think we have one question in from the audience. Mike, over to you.
Yeah. So what competitors do you see in the markets that are doing similar things? Like, are we talking a first mover advantage play?
It's an interesting question because if we walk backwards, say 3 years into the cannabis space, many individual companies that were licensed producers or growers started to augment their portfolio by saying that they were doing medical product development, they were going to do clinical studies and become pharmaceutical companies. And I think people in that space figured out very quickly it costs money, and the effort associated with it was actually taking away from the primary financial driver of their business. So they start to divest those opportunities. We actually did it a bit backwards. We were never a cannabis growing company. We weren't a farming vehicle, and we weren't a consumer product vehicle. We had always driven to the desire to prove that there was a good medical outcome for cannabis derived products. So I think, because we stuck to our guns and because we have the tenacity to spend the last 3 years continuing to invest in our efforts, it's made us kind of the only mover. I think GW Pharma, much larger pockets, much more infrastructure, governance, et cetera, behind them, much more pharma oriented. We're like a small one of those organizations where our desire is to stay focused on the outcomes, the patient focus, the physician focus, the consumer focus, and guarantee predictable health outcomes. That makes us unique.
Got an additional one in, and maybe tied to that question, Owen, or Avi perhaps as well. But from a retail customer perspective, do you have plans to get to the retail market? How, when? Maybe you can give us a bit of a view on progress there.
Absolutely. So to be a health-directed company and a biotech pharma company, we obviously have the indications that we've chosen that are pretty life-impacting and detrimental. But we also realize that the components that we're using in those products actually have health value. That's preventative. That could also be interjecting before somebody needs to be told or prescribed to take a particular indication. So as we get that data, those grouped active ingredients for our therapeutic will actually go into our consumer products. But in order to do that, you have to have a foundational product platform. So our foundational product platform for consumer products is quite simple right now. We have two primary base formulations. One is an algae-based formulation, which has, through social, scientific, and anecdotal information, has a very good reputation in skin health, both from an inflammation, from a wound healing, from moisturization, and skin irritation. We've chosen that as a first consumer product, and now you'll notice it's not cannabis. So we're not a cannabis company. we're a skin health pharmaceutical company. That foundational formulation will be a product that will launch and are able to launch with limited restriction globally, both from a regulatory perspective as well as from a marketing perspective. But the nice thing about it is it's a perfect foundational vehicle to then go and add back if we chose to add CBD or if we chose to add some other active ingredients to it. We have a life cycle management and a product stream that we can build that's foundationally grounded in the algae formulation that we have. Another formulation that we have that we're going to release and build and release in parallel is actually a cannabis root extract. Now, in Canada, I think people will appreciate this very quickly. This is our chicken wing. You throw away roots. People do not keep roots. Roots actually have no regulatory control over them whatsoever in the cannabis plant because they are not cannabinoid containing. Those roots actually cost money to remove and to destroy, but there is enough scientific information that we've been able to assemble that makes us believe that it is a very good base formulation composition for a primary product as well as product with additional active additives. It is also in the space of skin health. It's in the space of inflammation and wound healing and otherwise. So you can see foundationally it stays with our target strategy of overall skin health. And the first products we launch will be an algae-based product, a cannabis root-based product, and a combination product that has algae and cannabis root. And then very quickly following those products, once they establish our our presence in the market will be augmented. So the second phase or second generation will be with additive individual actives that either have already known or compelling social health benefits to them to show that we're building our product portfolio. And we will start to generate both marketing claims and clinical claims against those additives so we can substantiate a performance with those products and differentiate from competition that tries to follow.
So in fact, what I'm hearing, if I boil it down to a few points for the audience, you've got things that have low barriers to entry, a relatively well-defined pathway to market, and sound like they're in kind of the immediate or near immediate roadmap for you and the team, in addition to a number of things that obviously will have some additional barriers to entry and time, but a well-developed kind of product pipeline, perhaps.
Just like to add on to that, Eric, that the consumer market strategy doesn't only encompass the Canadian market, but part of the SANA strategy into UK and Europe encompasses also that as well. So again, this is a global strategy with low barrier and high barrier, a mix of high barrier and low barrier products.
Brilliant.
Awesome. And that dual commercialization strategy is very exciting to me. But just to jump back a little bit, we had a question from the audience around the use of proceeds. And I just wondering if you could go into that in a little bit more detail to give some explanation there.
Absolutely. And this is where that is it a science project question, I think, comes into play. So the approach that we're taking with SANA and with our CTCL target product is that we will have to run safety and efficacy studies. We right now believe, and we're kind of finalizing the groups that we're going to work with for the execution of this, but we're looking at probably $1 to $1.2 million of the proceeds to go towards the execution of that product. So that will encompass the tox requirements that we have, or the safety requirements, that we have to deliver for regulatory approval, as well as the clinic. And because it's orphan indication, we can move into a later stage clinical study than if we were doing a standard pharmaceutical entry. It changes the perspective from a cost. It changes the perspective from a timing. So it'll allow us to get to commercial regulatory approvable product offering within $1 million to $1.2 million of the proceeds. For the portfolio for the consumer products, depending on the number of products that we launch, and also the uptake, because obviously you have to consider not only logistics, but you have to consider manufacturing of the products as well. We will say there'll be a smaller portion, maybe half of that or less, that will go to launch our first products. And then another portion of the $3 million will go towards starting with substantiated claims and looking at how we're going to augment our product pipeline. And then there's a piece that goes to general operations.
Okay. And on that front, we were talking about this earlier. It was really interesting to me, the misconceptions around the cost of clinical trials. And I think a lot of people sort of assume it's $50 million or something like that. And you guys are raising $3 to $5 million. How are you going to accomplish that? Maybe you can talk a little bit more about what that means for you.
Yeah, and I think the $50 million is probably an underestimate, but so I've been involved in a number of clinical programs. It's very typical in a true new chemical entity pharma development, where you'll spend $1 million on your safety studies, you'll spend $1 million to $1.5 million on your phase 1, then you'll be in the $10 million for phase 2, and you'll get to $30+ million for phase 3, and then your follow-on product. And there's a requirement for that, and it's mainly around statistics, right? You're developing establishing a safety profile, you're establishing an efficacy profile, and you want to make sure that your risk to reward is well understood. So they're large studies. In an indication that, like what we've chosen for CTCL, being an orphan indication or an indication with unmet need, the population globally of patients suffering from this particular disease is small. The approach that they have to remedy either symptomology or to help cure the disease is minimal to non-existent. Therefore, the people developing those products are afforded some concession. The size of the studies, the duration of the studies are smaller, and a lot of the data you're collecting is when you're helping patients. So you're already at the point where you're a saleable product. So for us to run with the information that we have, and the fact that we're a botanical product, and the fact that we're already cannabinoid based in this space, and there's a volume of information play that we can make from a safety understanding, and there's also some anecdotal and some scientific efficacy information about the components of our product. We're able to streamline our development, work collaboratively with the regulatory bodies to have the burden of proof being, is it safe, and does it impart some value to the end user or patient, sorry? And if it does, let's move you quickly to the point where it's available and accessible. Hence, our dollar value is much lower than a standard pharma development new chemical entity. Now, I will say, and if we look at the GW Pharma model or otherwise, if we were going the new chemical entity path, it's very clear, it's very well documented. You know exactly what you have to do. You know what the burden of proof is. The cost is high for that, I think there's space and need for that. But for the approach that we're taking in our first product, they were chosen strategically. Oh, Eric, I think you're on mute.
I am, thank you. No Zoom webinar is complete without an accidental mute button. No, I think you're further articulating to the crowd that's with us today that this is a very well thought out approach and strategy, and really a product development life cycle that should be very compelling. I did want to maybe ask a couple other questions along the way. I know you've been out marketing your raise on the street and taking meetings, and maybe perhaps Avi, a good way to bring you back into the conversation as well. What are some things that either advisors or investors have been poking around at or asking you while you've been in kind of these smaller rooms, one-on-one sessions as you're exploring MedC within the investor community that haven't come up today so far in questions? Maybe one or two things each that you wanted to impart on a slightly broader audience.
Well, it really touches on the strategy of why raise 3 to 5 and what do we plan to do with the money, not only as far as expenditures, but what is our strategy moving forward as what you call an exit strategy. And for that purpose, we really have, we're working strongly with NEO, not just with DealSquare, on getting us as going from a private to a public listed company, creating value over the next year. When we reach that threshold in about 12 months of the UK approvals for our drug, then doing a much higher and larger issuance in order to go from UK to a much more global perspective. Because it is UK first, and it's the rest of the world afterwards. And that's where a lot of our investment's going to be focused in 2022, is taking our innovation, taking our regulatory approvals, and leveraging that into the world space. And that's going to cost money. So if we raise our pre-IPO or pre-listing capital now, we generate value over the next year. We're basically also offering liquidity to our investors almost from day one. And we're enabling our investors to enjoy the fruits of our work in about a year or two down the road, when not only when we IPO, but when we actually start monetizing our products. That's the strategy behind it. A lot of investment managers connect strongly with that strategy, especially that we're no longer going to be, after 4 years, we're finally going to do that transition from a privately held company to a publicly public company with all the regulatory hurdles and scrutiny involved with that, and with the potential to take a company right now with a pre-market valuation of 12 million and to drive it into a triple-digit sphere. And I think we're not that far away from that. If you take comparables and look once we cross that first clinical threshold and we establish efficacy and we establish a global reach, yes, we will definitely be a triple-digit company, and that's where we strive to create value for our investors. At the end of the day, people will invest in MedC because they see a long-term high value proposition, and that's what we have to offer.
Brilliant. Owen, from your end, anything else on the scientific end that you would bring in that has come up thus far?
Yeah, I think there's a fundamental need in the market right now to participate, especially given our current global health situation and otherwise. I think there's a need to invest in health and wellness. I think there's a need to invest in a better lifestyle and products that help maintain an active and healthy lifestyle. And fundamentally, we display as that. We don't display as somebody who's going out just to be the next Coke, or to have all the products on the shelf, or to be the next large pharmaceutical company. I think we come across very grassroots with respect to science's foundation, knowing the desired outcome, driving to health and well-being, and maturing and legitimizing this space. There's a bit of a comfort to that. We want to be like buying gold in times of panic, right? You invest in us because we'll be here for a long time. And I think we hear that. I think we hear that a little bit. And the other piece that I think is that has resonated with the groups that we've spoken to, because we're a continuum of product development, both a feed forward of adding more products to our portfolio or more value to our products. And if we do things at the far end of generating data, we can feed that back into the start. We would be, if we get captured in the cannabis space, we're one that could actually, we have enough ballast that we can withstand the storms that happen in this type of industry. We will always have an avenue or a venue that we're participating in that we can monetize our understanding, that we don't have to rush to release something. We can hold it till it has its value, or take advantage of its value in a lower, higher volume market. And I think that again, it resonates where people are a little bit confident that I'm not pulling it in for one kick at the can. And it's not something that is just a random mix to say that, I'm keeping your money diversified. It's a continuum of diversification that I think resonates.
Right. And I think it maybe tables one other question, and then Mike, I think you've got a couple other on the move as well. But patents, something that typically come up in the conversation, especially in the biopharma world, something you're contemplating looking at on the radar?
Actually, with the programs that we have, so for CTCL or otherwise, those are patented efforts already submitted and in different processes of approval. Because we're working with Dr. Koltai and the ARO, our patent portfolio is managed and held through them, and we have global exclusive rights or access to those. So they don't mess around. Like if it's a significant piece of data that they want to protect, they protect it. We have a great relationship with them right now. I think we're bringing credibility to their scientific efforts, and they're also interested in the fact that we can bring monetization to that scientific outcome. So that's where we stand for the clinical approaches we're taking. Realize for biologics, for plant-based, or stuff that's been created by a power greater than ours prior to us coming to the planet, it's hard to patent those. So we'll also manage through some trade secret and some composition patents, but our approach is to substantiate claims. If I build a product and I generate data relative to the performance of that product, anybody who wants to compete with me to make that same claim will have to generate that same data. Very few have enough intestinal fortitude to go down that path, because your chance of failing are high, right? Even if you're doing a comparison, you actually have to be comparable. So we feel that our protection will come from patents for the high-level intellectual components that we're doing, from data collection and clinical and marketing studies that we do to allow for approvable claims, and from our product performance activities. So that's really our control strategy.
Fantastic. And I think one of the things you touched on in the presentation, Owen, and you mentioned that you had left off a slide with some of the other people on the team, but I think that's one of the really powerful things about MedC that we could get into right now, the 90 years of R&D experience and your ability to bring these products to market as well as commercialize and monetize them.
Absolutely. we have, what is it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 PhDs as kind of the primary team. And that should scare everybody who's ever met a PhD before. I'm one of them, so I'm allowed to be derogatory. But the choices that we've had for the participants and for the PhDs that we have, this is almost counterintuitive, very practical. Practical in the sense that they have enough years of experience in benchtop research, in industry-related research, and in product-related research, that they know a good idea is only a good idea if somebody is willing to use it and pay for it. And so the efforts that we have with Dr. Koltai at the ARO, she is very good at the science of the disease areas that we're looking at, but her real value is being able to build models, whether they're cell-based models or computational models, to assess if the products that we are screening for a particular disease have a better than coin flip chance of passing a clinical study. The reason that's important is because if you put money into a clinical study, you want to at least have an indication that it's going to pass, because it's an expensive endeavor to fail. Her value, her strength is that she developed probably some of the better models that I've seen in any pharmaceutical space, let alone academic space, to assess the potential efficacy for the products that we're building. We have plant scientists. One of our, Dr. Shope, one of our advisors, he has 25, or no, oh my, it's more than that actually. He's probably listening, so I don't want to say too high. He has a number of very significant decades of experience in plant development, but it's in metabolism, it's in understanding major and minor components of plants and their value, and a primary area of research that he's established his career on is with gamma aminobutyric acid, which doesn't mean anything to anybody, but it's an inhibitory neurotransmitter in all living organisms, very important in humans, very important in the cannabinoid pathway and implications in humans. He's looked at that in plants, so we have that connectivity. I did my PhD with him and transitioned that into a pharmaceutical space where I was responsible for developing new drugs and new products, doing clinical aspects of those, or assessing and supporting clinical aspects of those, as well as commercializing those. Vince Coquero, the other partner, he did radiopharmaceuticals, he did development. I think he will have commercialized more than 100 products in his pharmaceutical and consumer product career, all in the health space. So if you look at that mix, it has strong science foundation, but there's value in the execution and kind of the build of it. And when you look at Avi and his brother Guy and the relationship there, the entrepreneurial spirit, I think that's critical. It's not entrepreneurial spirit from the sense of, I just build a business and it's great. It's saying, what do people want? What do people need? And what will resonate? If I find the right people to help deliver what people want and need, we will be able to generate value and therefore be able to generate success. So I think that kind of overarching knowledge and decades of experience helps the research space or the data space and academic space that we have supporting us really stay focused on the prize. We can quickly become a research project, but we are not in that business. We're in the business of monetizing good ideas that are substantiated and defendable. And I think that's where, when we talk about our decades of experience, it takes a while to hand select a team that we have. You can find PhDs, you can find physicians, you can find business people, but to find ones that kind of align and say, okay, we're all after the end goal and I'm not going to, personalize it. That's what makes us strong. And I think that's why our team works well together. Avi, I don't know if you have a comment on that, but that's.
You said it perfectly. I have nothing to add. Thank you.
I was going to say, Owen, I think that's a quotation mark around the front and end of that last sentence, and spot on timing today as well. Everyone, you've heard a lot from Avi and Owen today about what is a pretty incredible business. never mind one with a very topical scientific foundation attached and a very clear business plan. Again, it's MedC Biopharma. Their ticker on DealSquare and available on DealMaker is MECB. We spent 45 minutes today hearing about this global skincare, health, and pharmaceutical company. They have a clear strategy. They have a credible management team and a plan for the future and for the use of funds that you as investors may seek to give them. They're truly bridging worlds here, and it's something impressive to behold. And we're pleased to be partners with you in the journey. As mentioned, they're doing a raise on DealSquare now. For international investors, you can close your investments on DealMaker. The link, as I promised, for their page is in the chat. For advisors, if you're not registered, feel free to. Otherwise, by all means, reach out to the MedC team. You've got Avi and Owen here. I'm sure you can find Michael and the DealMaker team on LinkedIn or by email. Likewise for us over here at DealSquare and Neo. Truly, we appreciate you all joining us today to learn more about this fascinating opportunity. We're grateful for your time. Please enjoy the balance of your afternoon. Stay safe. This is DealSquare and DealMaker signing off.